Welcome to the Think Forward podcast, where we speak with futurists, innovators, and big thinkers. Come along with your host, Steve Fisher, and explore the future together.
Welcome back to Foundations in Foresight, a Think Forward series. I'm Steve Fisher, and today we begin our deep dive into the 9 super shifts, the massive structural transformations reshaping society, technology, business, and culture. Over the next 18 episodes, we'll be breaking down each super shift, exploring what's driving it, the ripple effects it's creating, and what it means for businesses, governments, and individuals trying to navigate the future. We're kicking things off with generational drift, a transformation that is reshaping the global workforce, social structures, and economic priorities in ways that few leaders are prepared for. Demographics define the foundation of how societies function, how economies grow, and how institutions operate. But today, those demographics are undergoing a fundamental realignment, changing everything from how businesses attract talent to how governments sustain social programs. In this episode, we'll explore what generational drift is and why it's a super shift, how aging populations, declining birth rates, and generational values are restructuring work, politics, and consumer behavior, what this means for businesses, governments, and individuals moving forward. By the end of this episode, you'll have a clear understanding of why this shift is happening, what challenges and opportunities it presents, and why adapting to it is crucial for future success. Let's dive in. What is generational drift? Generational drift isn't just about age differences or millennials overtaking boomers in the workforce. It's about a deeper shift in the structure of populations and power dynamics. There are 3 major forces behind this transformation. 1. Aging populations and declining birth rates. For the first time in human history, many of the world's largest economies have an aging population larger than its younger workforce. Japan, South Korea, Germany, and even China are facing historically low birth rates, shrinking the size of their working-age populations. By 2050, 1 in 6 people globally will be over the age of 65. This is creating an imbalance, fewer workers supporting more retirees, straining social safety nets, pension programs, and healthcare systems. 2. The rise of the digital native generations. Gen Z and Gen Alpha are the first truly digital native generations. They have different expectations for work, education, and financial security than any generation before them. They prioritize flexibility, purpose-driven work, and digital-first interactions, leading to new workforce and consumer behaviors. 3. A cultural power shift from boomers to millennials and Gen Z. For decades, baby boomers and Gen X have held economic and political power, shaping institutions, policies, and financial markets. Now, millennials and Gen Z are rapidly becoming the dominant workforce, consumer base, and political force. This generational transition is driving shifts in leadership styles, policy priorities, and business models. These forces combined are reshaping economies, politics, and social structures in ways that we're just beginning to understand. Now let's talk about the societal and economic impact of generational drift. So what happens when a rapidly aging population collides with a digitally native, value-driven younger generation? 1. The global workforce crisis. Many industries, especially in healthcare, manufacturing, and skilled trades, are struggling to replace retiring baby boomers. In some countries, labor shortages are severe enough that companies are turning to automation, robotics, and AI to fill the gaps. Organizations must rethink talent acquisition, workforce retention, and knowledge transfer between generations. 2. The rewriting of career paths and retirement. Younger generations are rejecting the traditional work for 40 years, then retire model. More people are embracing freelance, gig work, and hybrid careers. Retirement itself is shifting, with more older workers staying in the workforce longer, whether by choice or necessity. 3. The financial strain on social safety nets. Countries with aging populations are facing massive pension crises, as fewer young workers pay into systems that must support growing numbers of retirees. Some governments are raising the retirement age, but that's not always a politically viable solution. Others are experimenting with new economic models like universal basic income, UBI, and alternative taxation structures. The shift in consumer power and spending. Millennials and Gen Z now control significant purchasing power, but they spend differently than previous generations. They prioritize experiences over material goods, demand sustainable and ethical business practices, and rely on digital ecosystems for decision-making. Traditional advertising and business models must adapt to these shifting consumer behaviors. Now, we will spend some time on the political and cultural transformation caused by generational drift. It is not just economic, It's deeply political and cultural as well. 1. The decline of traditional institutions. Younger generations trust governments, corporations, and legacy media less than ever before. Decentralized communities, social media-driven activism, and alternative governance models are rising. 2. The generational divide in social values. Millennials and Gen Z prioritize diversity, inclusion, and sustainability more than any previous generation. Older generations often hold on to traditional economic and social structures that are being challenged. Intergenerational tensions are rising as younger generations push for systemic change. 3. The transformation of leadership and governance. The rise of younger leaders is bringing new styles of governance, decentralized, collaborative, and technology-driven. Digital-first governance models are emerging, challenging old bureaucratic systems. The challenge will be in how older and younger leaders transition power effectively. So what does this mean for the future? Well, generational drift is not just a social shift. It's an economic and political transformation. Organizations and governments that fail to adapt will struggle. Those that embrace these changes will thrive. Some key questions to consider. How will businesses adjust to an aging workforce while attracting and retaining younger talent? How will governments sustain pension and healthcare systems without enough younger workers paying into them? How will leadership styles evolve as digital-first generations take power? These are the questions we'll tackle in the next episode, where we'll explore how businesses, leaders, and institutions can strategically navigate generational drift. You can see that this episode was all about understanding the massive demographic transformation underway. But now, it's time to apply this knowledge. So here is your challenge. Look at your workplace, industry, or community. How is generational drift already changing expectations and priorities? Think about the long-term effects. What happens in 10 or 20 years if these shifts continue? Start tracking signals of generational drift. Where do you see workforce shortages, changing values, or new economic models emerging? In our next episode, we'll move from understanding generational drift to strategically navigating it, helping businesses and leaders prepare for the workforce, economic, and cultural shifts ahead. Until next time, keep exploring possibilities, remain flexible, and as always, think forward.
Thanks for listening to the Think Forward podcast. You can find us on all the major podcast platforms and at www.thinkforwardshow.com, as well as on YouTube under Think Forward Show. See you next time.